Welcome to the Divine Identity Podcast, where we explore Scripture-first theology and the reality of God as revealed in the biblical text. In this video, we're looking at Igor's article, Bringing Glory into Focus, the Role of Type of Being. Okay, let's dive into this foundational question. What kind of being is this? You know, Igor argues that every single act of real knowledge has to begin with recognition. But here's the catch. Before you can accurately describe, interpret, or even truly love a being, you first have to identify the kind of reality that being actually occupies. Think about it. A name alone, that doesn't establish knowledge. A title doesn't give us true recognition, and just listing off a bunch of attributes, that doesn't secure identity either. Before we get to any of that, we literally have to start at the bedrock. We've got to identify the type of being.
So, here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We'll start with the undefined problem, move on to why definition is recognition, not reduction, then look at biblical types of creation, explore the unique, uncreated spirit, and finally wrap up with bringing glory into focus.
Let's start with Section 1, the undefined problem.
Igor points out a massive barrier to our understanding, especially when we're talking about God. He uses this brilliant mathematical analogy. Think about an undefined equation. What actually happens when an equation is undefined? Well, it can't produce a clear solution, right? Because the necessary relations just haven't been established. It's just this unresolved, blurry reality. And the exact same principle applies to understanding a being. If the type of being remains undefined, our minds literally have no stable place to stand. Sure, you can use really rich, reverent language, but reverence alone doesn't actually provide definition. We absolutely need a defined type to give us stable boundaries and clear relation.
That brings us to Section 2, recognition, not reduction.
Now, some people really worry that defining God somehow puts him in a box. But Igor argues the exact opposite. Establishing boundaries is actually what makes true recognition possible. The absolute heart of his thesis is this quote right here. Definition is recognition, not reduction. Think of it like a camera lens. When you twist that lens to bring a blurry image into sharp focus, you aren't making the mountain or the landscape smaller, right? You aren't reducing it. You're just clarifying the line so you can actually see its beauty. Defining God according to his revealed type of being doesn't exhaust who he is at all. Instead, it honors exactly what he has made known. Real knowledge doesn't have to be exhaustive knowledge to be true.
Let's move to and see how this builds. Igor lays out this really necessary order of operations for understanding God. Step 1 is establishing the type. Step 2 is the definition that naturally follows. Only then, at Step 3, can we properly understand attributes and actions, which finally leads us to Step 4, true recognition. Now, why does it have to be in this exact order? Well, because a being's actions flow directly from what that being actually is. If we start talking about God's love or power or holiness, before establishing his type, those attributes are just kind of floating without any structure. Remember, God is not defined by performance. He acts according to who he is.
Moving right along to Section 3, biblical types of creation.
Igor shows us that Scripture doesn't just lump everything into one giant, vague category. The Bible actually gives us real, non-interchangeable type distinctions. Let's look at the first one, the flesh type. Consider Isaiah 31:3. It says, "The Egyptians are human and not God. Their horses are flesh and not spirit." Notice that clear distinction? The horse is explicitly identified as flesh. Igor clarifies that this places the horse strictly inside the physical creature category. It's a living creature for sure, but its specific type marker is flesh. It belongs entirely to the physical order.
Next up, we have the soul type, which is exactly how humanity is identified. Genesis 2:7 tells us that God formed man from the dust, breathed into him the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Now, Igor highlights something crucial here. Living souls is the completed result, but the type marker itself is soul. By definition, man is a compound creaturely type, formed from both physical and spiritual elements. This is a totally different ballgame than the horse. This is also exactly why, over in 1 Peter 3:20, human persons are referred to as souls. Man isn't merely physical, and he isn't merely spirit. Man is the soul-type being.
Then, we have a third distinct category in Scripture, the created spirit type. Hebrews 1:14 asks about angels, calling them ministering spirits. Igor points out that angels are created spirit-type beings. They aren't physical like horses, and they aren't compound soul types like humans either. They belong strictly to the created spiritual order, meaning they have a beginning, they receive their existence directly from God, and they remain entirely dependent upon him.
And that brings us to the climax of this theological framework. Section 4, Unique uncreated spirit.
After looking at those types within creation, we have to recognize the supreme type of being that God himself occupies. John 4:24 declares, God is spirit. So the crucial point is that this verse absolutely does not place God inside the creaturely category of created spirit beings like angels. God is not just one spirit among a bunch of other spirits. Igor's article firmly establishes that God belongs to his own entirely unique category. He is the uncreated, eternal spirit being.
To put that into perspective, take a look at this table. It perfectly illustrates the massive gap between created spirits and the uncreated spirit. Notice the stark distinction in origin. Angels are created, but God is eternal. Look at the life source. Angels are dependent, but God is the actual, literal source of life itself. And in category, angels are creatures, while God alone is creator. Igor argues that God's distinction from angels isn't just about who came first, His type of being is fundamentally unique. He is the one-of-a-kind spirit being from whom every single other created type receives its existence.
Finally, we arrive at section 5, bringing glory into focus.
This is the true pastoral and theological payoff of Igor's entire framework. Why does this structured approach to right recognition actually matter so much for us? Well, right recognition has a profound, highly practical impact. First, it completely preserves that vital boundary between creator and creature. God gives, sustains, and rules. Creatures receive, depend, and respond. Second, establishing this distinction protects our proper worship, keeping God rightly recognized as God. Third, it makes true, intimate relationship possible, because we're relating to God according to the exact reality He has revealed, rather than just some undefined, blurry divine idea we made up. And finally, it brings His glory into absolutely perfect focus.
Type of being is the first step of right recognition. It distinguishes, defines, orders, and brings glory into focus so that God may be known according to the reality He has revealed.